What's up everybody, Teancum here with Sew Yeah Quilting. In today's tutorial, I'm going to show you how you make this autumn placemat using a jelly roll. Let's get started. Now, the very first thing that you gotta do is select a jelly roll that is autumn color. I mean, it falls with the autumn theme here. This is the one that I've selected. This is Riley Blake's Bountiful Autumn. Wonderful collection here. Kind of falls into that Civil War autumn color scheme, which I personally love. Or grab a jelly roll from the closet or your stash to be able to make this. What we're gonna do is separate the pieces because we need our lights and our darks. And you really want to only separate your lighter colors from the darkest of darks. As you can see here on my placemat, I've got these black strips here in between, which is coming from my jelly roll. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So you can see here, I'm separating out my pieces. I've got a stack of my colors, my lights, my brights, all that kind of stuff. I've got my blacks. Now, we're going to take a handful of these blacks and we're going to cut them directly in half, making a very small and tiny strip here, which will give us separation between all of our colors. Now, to cut it in half, you're going to just fold our jelly roll in half. I'm actually going to fold mine into quarters because I think I'll get the best cut that way. Now, 2.5 divided by 2 is 1 1/4. So that's what we're going to do right now. Take this like so, and rotary cutter in hand, chop this thing directly in half. Now, from here, I'm gonna start sewing my layers together. And we're gonna make essentially a giant cloth, for lack of better words. But we're gonna take a colored piece, a dark piece, a colored piece, a dark piece. You can see the trend here that I'm going for. And we're gonna sew them all together. So let's just do that right now. I'm going to just do a nice fold here. And since I know that I'm going to be adding more and more on, I'm going to just add my next piece on, next piece on. So I'm going to slide all this out of my way, pull out my ironing board, grab my iron here. Again, always pressing to the dark side, that always helps in sewing. Now that we got our first piece sewed on, we're going to just keep repeating the steps here. Grab my next strip, lay it on, sew all the way down. I'm going to do that till about 20-ish inches long, so I'm going to just keep sewing everything together. Now again, ironing board, iron, and you can see how I'm just getting a little tiny black strip in between these pieces. It adds just a little bit more touch of character to our project. Along with, it gives us really good reference lines to work with. I'll show you what I'm talking about here in just one second. Adding my next piece, and again guys, we're gonna just keep doing this for about 20 strips. Once I get close, I'll show you exactly how many strips I used, but we're gonna keep on sewing. So, now that I got my strips sewn together, I'll count them for you. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different color strips. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different of the small strips there. So not very much fabric used up here. And some of you are probably asking now, obviously we have a different design on this leaf than what we've sewn together here. It's very easy to do. What I'm going to do first though is I'm going to fold this directly in half. And we have to make sure we're lining up our strips with the strips underneath it. That way we don't cut and we're all wonky or crooked or anything like that. And just like everyone knows, if you don't know, this is just a fun fact, not every strip is exactly the same. They can be off by up to 1 inch. So you can see here, I kind of got this jagged edge, and I'm going to cut off the little extra here. Then from here, I am going to cut the fold off on this side. So as little as you need to take off, the better. Now, what we're going to do next is I'm going to open these up, and you want to make sure that you're keeping them exactly next to each other, that way we don't have any screw ups here. Now, the best way, in my opinion, how to cut this is very simple. We have to make sure though that we are cutting these in opposite directions. That we're cutting from the bottom left to the top right, and the bottom right to the top left on this other piece. So we have to make sure we do this right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this just like so, and I'm going to make it so that my points fold together. And now I'm going to do the exact opposite directionally that I did here. So same thing, just going to fold these like so. And you're not folding it to be square, you're just folding it so that you know exactly where you need to cut here. So now we're going to grab our ironing board or ironing press here. And when I iron this all the way out, I'm going to set down that seam. Now that seam will give me a reference point. I'll show you guys what I'm talking about here in just one second. Now that I'm setting this seam, you can see how perfectly I'm on that little point up there. Once I open this back up, there's a visible mark from corner to corner here. That will be a phenomenal guide for me to then lay down my ruler right on that mark, and I know it's with the way the fabric moves, as opposed to if I just draw a line straight down, then you can have a chance of having a little bit crooked of a line, or maybe the fabric doesn't actually move that way. So now that that one's done, I'm going to repeat the same process to this one right here. So as you can see here, I've cut these directly in half, and it kind of makes this triangle here. Now, by doing this, when we sew the two pieces back together that we need to sew together, which is going to be, we're going to take this piece here, it's going to give you, it's not going to be perfectly square or perfectly straight, but it's going to give you this bias looking design here. Very simple to do, and now it's time to just sew these up right sides together. And again, they're not perfectly square, so don't think that you're supposed to get a square. It's way more like a kite shape. And as you can see here, you'll need a little bit extra at the top than you will at the bottom. So very, very easy project here. I'm gonna put right sides together there, right sides together there. Make sure you're lining up your seams the best that you can. Use wonder clips if need be. And then take this on over to the sewing machine to sew it all the way down. And again, it's not a perfect square, but it gives us enough space and room to work with here. Now it's time for turning this into a leaf. Now, down in the description below, we have PDF downloads of two different leaf-shaped patterns here. One is the one that you've seen here, and the other one's more like a maple leaf. Either one works for this particular design. I've gone ahead and cut out my leaf here and taped it together. You can cut it out on plastics, cardboard, whatever you like. Then what I'm going to do is, you can see how there's this dotted line all the way down it. I'm going to line up my dotted line with the seam that runs all the way down. Now, depending on which way you want the points going is how you place this. For instance, if I cut this, you can see how everything will be going towards the tip of this leaf here. All the angles point that direction. I personally want it going the other direction, so I'm going to just flip this thing around and do it like this instead. Bring it down here. Now some of you at home are going to say, hey, there's a little bit of waste here. What you can do is downsize this pattern, and then you can get a leaf here and a leaf here if you so choose. But we'll put this down like so, and cut this out at however you feel comfortable cutting something out. Rotary cutters, scissors, however that is. I'm going to grab a couple of pins just on the in case. Pop a pin in right here, making sure that stays straight. Put one in right over here as well. Trying to keep things as flat as possible as I'm doing this. And I'm going to use my trusty rotary cutter here to cut this out. Again, use what you feel comfortable with. I've used rotary cutters for a long time now, and I feel really comfortable with cutting something like this out with a rotary cutter. So I'm going to just use a fat quarter for the back here. Now you want to lay it out exactly how you want it to look. So I'm going to put my leaf down on it like so. And I'm going to cut this leaf out in my fabric here as well. It's going to be quicker and easier for this particular project to just use some scissors on this fabric. And guys, if it's just a rough cut, it's okay because you can finish up the cutting at the end as well. Now, as far as what's going to go on the inside of this, you have lots of different options here. I'm going to be using a Teancum. Teancum is essentially a really hard interface. It'll keep things very, very flat. It'll also give it just a little bit of mobility, a little bit of pliability, but it'll be hard. That way it lays on the table, very nice and neat. You'll never have to worry about that. And a placemat, if you get crumbs on it, should be able to be taken outside and brush the crumbs off. This will give you the ability to just fold it up a little bit and get the crumbs off, or throw in the trash, or whatever you do with those. So, next step here, same thing, I'm gonna lay this down right on top, and I'm gonna give it a semi-rough cut as well. And this is a double-sided fusible, meaning that we can just iron the fabric directly onto this. Got it rough cut out, now it's time to fuse things together. It's time to fuse everything together. Be very careful not to touch your iron to the fusible. If you do, then you will have glue on your iron. So be careful on that. Get things lined up how you'd like it to see them. But if you do get glue on your iron, grab some Gooby Gone or grab some iron cleaner from SewYaQuilting.com, whatever you guys feel like, to get your mess cleaned up there. Now that it's ironed to it nice and well, I'm going to just finish off the rough cut here and make it so it's the actual cut. That way things aren't really moving on me. So now that it's on exactly how I want it to do, I'm going to turn it over and add my backing to it. Using the exact same principle here. And since I gave it a little extra, it should lay over the top of this just perfectly. Start with the bottom there. Now it's time to iron this onto place. So after doing all that cutting, it's time to clean up your station. Go ahead and clean it up. And it's time to sew this now to finish the project. Now what I've done on mine is I did a straight stitch all the way down the center seam here. And then anywhere on these black seams, I also just stitched right in the ditch. That way I know everything's held together. It gives it more of a leaf-like look. And then I'll show you what the next step is from there. Now is a really good time to throw on a walking foot onto your sewing machine, just like the one I have here. That way it holds all the layers together and it makes it sew beautifully. If not though, you can do the project without one. It just makes it just a hair easier. So you can't see it here because I just stitched right in the ditch here. But when I flip it over, you can see I've got a nice stitch line all the way through there. I'm going to keep on doing that to all of my black surfaces here. That way it kind of looks like a leaf from the back side. And like you see here, so I've already got my center seam in here, but this is the look that we're going to be going for on the back here on that leaf. So again, just sewing in all the black areas here of these black strips. That way it gives it more of a leaf-like pattern on the back, but then I know everything's held together securely. So I'm going to just keep on doing that and you'll see the results. When you put your piece in and you line it all up and you start going, if you start from the top edge of your leaf and work your way down, you'll be able to pivot and make the other angle at the same time. So I'm going to go all the way down, stop with my needle down, lift up my pressure foot, turn my project, pressure foot down, and continue sewing. So now that I got all my lines on the back, it's time to do a finishing edge all the way around this. Now, your sewing machine at home probably has a bunch of different options here. Let me show you the options that I have on my machine. So right here, I have the Brina 480, which is like considered a midline machine, which 99% of the machines out on the market have these stitches I'm about to talk about. What I'm going to do is I'm going to jump over into my decorative stitches. I'm looking for a satin stitch that has a little bit of movement to it, or maybe a pattern to it that is in a straight line. This is the one that I'm picking for today. It's kind of an ovally shape, but I like the way that it looks like. I've done it multiple times on other placemats. I just enjoy the look of it. But if you don't have a decorative stitch and you have zigzag, what you're going to do is click on your zigzag button, and you're going to move your stitch length to be way more like a satin stitch. So you're looking like at 0.5 or somewhere roughly around there on if you have a computerized machine. If you don't have a computerized machine, trial and error this to get the satin stitch that you're looking for. But since we have a machine that, quite honestly, we never really use our decorative stitches, now's the time to throw one onto this project. I'm going to use that oval, like I said. And I'm going to just barely move it around here a little bit, just like that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew that the majority of the oval is on my material, and just the lightest bit of it will hang off, which will cover this edge all the way around. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Again, if you have a walking foot, this is the best time to use it. I'm going to put my fabric so it always is staying right there on the inside of my walking foot. Now, this is finished work at this moment. What you sew now will be on your finished project, just like what you're seeing here on ours. But it'll give it a really cool look to it, and it's a good excuse to practice some decorative stitch work. So, let's go ahead and do this. So now that I've gotten it all the way done, all the way around, clean up your edges with a pair of scissors, and just like that, your project's done. I love how this all comes together at one time, and when it's finished and ready for the table. And guys, I really hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you had, hit the like button, subscribe to our channel if you're new, and don't be afraid to share it with your friends. And friendly reminder here, down in the description below, guys, there are the PDF downloads for this leaf and an additional leaf. That way you can have a little bit of variety there for your holiday season. Also, while you're down in the description below, don't be afraid to check out SewYaQuilting.com for all of your sewing needs. My name's Teancum, teaching how to sew like a pro. We'll see you here next week at Sew Yeah Quilting.